Well, hello, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Happy Independence Day to you.
Thank you, thank you. So glad to finally have you on.
It's a pleasure to be on.
And how was your week?
Pretty busy, but I can't complain. I'm here to do it. So thank you very much for asking.
So let's get started. So, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you have going on with our listening audience?
Well, pretty much so. I've just retired here the last few months from the Tennessee Valley Authority doing work with them. I actually retired earlier than that, but I stayed on as a contractor and I've worked as a senior labor relations consultant. Also worked more recently for a company called Management Associated Results Company, MARC, where we actually teach labor relations to companies around the United States and Canada. And so I've just pretty much so laid all that down at the end of 2019. And basically, I just focus on Bible teaching and things that God has called me to do. That's my heart.
You retired twice.
I did. I retired and then I came back and worked for 10 and a half years for the same company, as well as for another company, training all of TVA's managers in MARC principles of labor relations, as well as Entergy, Southern, and other companies as well. So been pretty busy, and it's good to have a break from all that.
You are a busy person. You definitely are. So, we're going to talk a little bit about your books, and I do know that you have authored at least four books.
Actually, three.
Oh, three books. Three books. So, let me get started with these questions. And I should really know them by heart by now. So, so we've already established that you have written three books because the first question was how many books have you written? But I do understand that you have some that you have not quite put out yet.
Yeah, I'd rather not talk about those. Essentially, to me, the three books that I've written so far are two fictions. One is called The Gatekeeper, which the revised version was published in November of 2018. The Beyond the Lies, which was actually published around the February-March timeframe of 2019. And those are the two fictions. I co-authored a third book called If the Shoe Fits with my brother, Frederick Brabson, who's a pastor. And it is a nonfiction. It's about modern day parables with spiritual applications. So essentially following the process that Jesus did by taking parables to communicate deep spiritual truths, it can be used as a devotional or as a study. So yes, those are the three books that I have actually put out there in the market.
And which is your favorite?
If I had to choose a favorite, Verna, it would be Beyond the Lies. Actually, I started that book before I started the other ones. Beyond the Lies, I had it for a couple of decades before I actually published it because I worked on it all the time. And the message of Beyond the Lies, if you don't mind me saying, it's the message of that book is that you and I cannot possibly serve God and have a relationship with Him based on someone else's faith. It has to be personal. And the book is about two teenagers, one Anthony Morgan and another one Jesse Cartwright. And Anthony is a teenage boy who is an outstanding athlete. He's the number one baseball player in the United States. And he is sought after, and he has a really wonderful future ahead of him in college baseball or also in professional baseball. But what happens to him is he because his faith in God is only through his parents and not himself, he doesn't really know what it means to be a Christian. He was brought up in the Christian home, so he just assumed he was a Christian. And his father, who was a college baseball player, begins to hone the skills of his son, teach him his father's his hero. And what happens is Anthony becomes totally lost when his father, in his 40s, is diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and dies. And that tragedy starts Anthony on a downward spiral of bad decisions, which ultimately threaten his life and his future in college and professional baseball. Now, his best friend, Jesse Cartwright, they have been best friends all of their lives. And she faces her own tragedies as well. Her father was a drunkard. He was physically and emotionally abusive, not only to her mother, but to herself as well. And he ultimately is in prison and dies in prison, never, ever having shown any remorse for his behavior toward them. But Jessie herself is a born fighter. She actually comes to faith in Christ as a senior in high school. And when she does, she approaches her struggles and her tragedies, unlike Anthony, differently. She faces her pain and her struggles with her faith in Christ. And because of her newfound faith in Christ, Anthony begins to distance himself from her simply because he's angry at God because of his father's death. And so the two begin to grow apart. She turns to her faith in God. Anthony, on the other hand, turns to booze. But however, the two, eventually discover that their lives are somehow intertwined and neither will truly realize his or her dreams without the other. So don't get me wrong. I think all of us, and I know that you're a writer too, Werner, but I think that all of us are, as writers, are influenced by other writers and other authors as well. So when I was writing this book, and I said I started it before the other ones, I just finished it after the other two. But essentially, I considered the book Beyond the Lies my masterpiece, for lack of a better word, because I tried to make it as captivating as The Natural by Bernard Malamud. I've tried to make it as compelling as Love Comes Softly, excuse me, by Janet Oakes. And I also tried at times to make it as humorous as Tyler Perry's Diary of a Mad Black Woman, because it's a coming of age story. It's hopefully appeals not only to the young, but to the old. It appeals to the sports enthusiast, the romantic, and those who are gripped by, human tragedy, as well as those who celebrate the triumph of the human spirit.
I enjoyed reading Beyond the Lies, as I have enjoyed reading another one of your great books. But you are an awesome writer, and now your next book, the one, what is it? Gatekeepers.
Right.
Gatekeeper. That was definitely a page turner for me. I mean, I normally would go like if the introductory part of the book can capture my attention,
right,
it got me. But if it don't, then I kind of put it aside.
Right, I understand.
That particular book, it was like, okay.
It was dark.
It was quite interesting, to say the least. Very interesting, as well as Beyond the Lies. But it was quite interesting. So I don't want to give the book away. I want you to share that particular book and how. Let me see if that's one of my questions, because sometimes I do just don't mind me, go off script, and I'm learning to try to stay within the text of the thing. So my next question is, what is the most surprising thing you discovered while writing your books?
Well, I discovered, as probably every author discovers, at least for me, that nonfictions as well as fictions require a lot of research from trusted sources to ensure that they're accurate. Now, certainly my nonfiction that I co-authored with my brother, If the Shoe Fits, required a lot of research from Bible commentaries and teachings from past and present seasoned Bible expositors, and that's to be understood. But so did my books, The Gatekeeper and Beyond the Lies, which were fiction, because in order for you to write those books, a lot of times in fiction books, there's a lot of factual information. And so you have to do a lot of research on information on fiction as well. For example, in Beyond the Lies, I had to do a lot of research on baseball stats and records, Hall of Fame issues and things of this nature. Who's recruiting college recruits? How do they get trained, the whole 9 yards? And The Gatekeeper, I had to actually do a lot of biblical research as it relates to demon possession. How's it treated today in psychology? How's it viewed? Has there been any phenomena out there that or just totally unexplained? So yes, that's one of the things that I had to learn, that in writing fiction and nonfiction, the most surprising thing is a lot of times there's just as much research for a fiction as there is a nonfiction. But if you want your book to have an impact, and if you want your book to communicate a message, you want to definitely do the research before you actually put it out. And no one is more critical of one's book than the author themselves.